Well, childhood stories shape our worldview in ways we rarely notice. But here's something wild. The Three Little Pigs was originally a cautionary tale about the Industrial Revolution and the shift from agricultural to urban living. Let's unpack this classic and see what it really tells us about society.
That's fascinating. And when you consider the historical context, the whole brick house versus straw house takes on a completely different meaning, doesn't it?
Well, let's dive into the literary symbolism here. The progression from straw to sticks to bricks mirrors the evolution of human settlements, but it's also a brilliant metaphor for personal development. The story employs what scholars call progressive parallelism. Each attempt builds on the last one's failure.
Hmm. You know what's interesting about that? The earliest versions of this tale, dating back to the 1840s, were actually much darker than what we tell children today.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that. The original versions had the wolf actually eating the first two pigs, no running to their brother's house for safety. It's like, this perfect example of how we've softened these cautionary tales over time. But the core message about preparation and resilience remains unchanged.
Speaking of literary devices, the rule of three shows up consistently here: three pigs, three houses, three attempts by the wolf. What do you make of that pattern?
Well, that's such a crucial observation. The number three appears in storytelling across cultures. It's what folklorists call the power of three. We see it in everything from Goldilocks to modern literature. In this case, it creates this perfect story arc: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Or in more modern terms, problem, failed solution, successful solution.
That's making me think about how contemporary authors have reinterpreted the story. Have you seen any of the modern adaptations?
Oh my gosh. Yes, there's this fascinating version from the wolf's perspective that completely subverts the traditional narrative. It's like what Gregory Maguire did with Wicked, taking a familiar story and showing us the other side. But what's really interesting is how these retellings still maintain the core themes of preparation versus improvisation,
The way you're describing it really highlights the story's relevance to modern economic theory, too.
right? It's like an economics 101 lesson wrapped in a children's tale. The first pig represents immediate gratification and minimal investment, basically the fast food approach to life. The second pig shows moderate investment but still cutting corners, while the third pig understands the value of capital investment and long term planning.
That's such a compelling analysis, especially when you consider how it relates to current housing market challenges.
You know what's really striking? The story's treatment of failure and recovery. In modern psychology, we talk about the growth mindset, the idea that failures are learning opportunities. This story was teaching that concept centuries before Carol Dweck coined the term. The pigs who failed didn't just disappear from the narrative, they learned and adapted.
Well, that's certainly relevant to today's discussions about resilience and mental health.
Exactly. And let's talk about the wolf for a moment. This antagonist represents what literary critics call the external chaos factor. It's not just a predator, it's the embodiment of all external threats to stability. In today's world, that could be economic downturns, climate change, or technological disruption.
The way you frame that really brings out the story's deeper implications for risk management and community support.
Oh, and here's something fascinating. Anthropologists have found similar building materials parables in cultures worldwide. It's like this universal human understanding that shortcuts don't work in the long run. The Maasai have a similar tale about building protective enclosures, and Japanese folklore includes stories about the importance of solid foundations.
That really speaks to the universal nature of these fundamental life lessons.
And what's particularly relevant today is how the story addresses the balance between individual responsibility and community support. The third pig doesn't just save himself, he provides shelter for his brothers. It's this beautiful illustration of how personal success and community responsibility can coexist.
That's such a nuanced take on what could be dismissed as just a simple children's story.
Well, that's the genius of these traditional tales. They operate on multiple levels. For children, it's a straightforward story about being careful and working hard. For adults, it's this complex meditation on resource allocation, risk management, and social responsibility. It's like this perfect example of what Jung called the collective unconscious, these universal teachings embedded in simple narratives.
Looking toward the future, how do you think this story will continue to evolve and remain relevant?
I think its core messages about preparation, resilience, and community will always resonate. But maybe future versions will address things like sustainable building practices or digital security. The houses we build today aren't just physical, they're financial, digital, and emotional. That's what makes this story so enduring. It's infinitely adaptable while maintaining its essential truth.